On Christmas morning, 1996, the city of Boulder, Colorado awoke to a bitter cold and quiet holiday. Families across the country were exchanging gifts, sharing meals, and creating memories. But inside a sprawling home on 15th Street, a nightmare was unfolding, one that would capture the world's attention, fuel endless speculation, and remain unresolved for nearly 3 decades. This is the story of JonBenét Patricia Ramsey, a 6-year-old beauty queen whose tragic death became one of America's most infamous unsolved murders. A crime scene clouded by mistakes, a ransom note that defied logic, and theories that split public opinion in half. Almost 30 years later, the question still lingers: who killed JonBenét Ramsey? JonBenét Ramsey was born on August 6, 1990, in Atlanta, Georgia. She was the youngest child of JonBenét Ramsey, a successful businessman, and Patricia Patsy Ramsey, a former beauty queen who had won the title of Miss West Virginia. The family appeared to live the American dream, wealthy, prominent, and deeply involved in their community. By 1991, the Ramseys relocated to Boulder, Colorado, where John's company, Access Graphics, had achieved remarkable success. They lived in a large Tudor-style home, a 7,000-square-foot property with multiple floors, hidden stairways, and a sprawling basement. JonBenét's older brother, Burke Ramsey, was 9 years old at the time. While Burke was described as quiet and reserved, JonBenét was the opposite, outgoing, bubbly, and the apple of her parents' eyes. By the age of 6, JonBenét was already a familiar face in the child beauty pageant world. With her blonde hair, bright smile, and charm, she won multiple crowns. For Patsy, her daughter's pageant career was a continuation of her own, and JonBenét seemed to enjoy performing on stage. But behind the glittering tiaras and pageant gowns, a tragedy was looming. On December 25, 1996, the Ramseys hosted a small Christmas dinner at the home of family friends. JonBenét had received a brand new bicycle as a present. That evening, the family returned home around 9:30 p.m. Patsy tucked her daughter into bed while John checked that the house was secure. The following morning, December 26th, everything changed. Around 5:30 a.m., Patsy Ramsey woke up to prepare for a family trip they had planned to Michigan. As she walked down the grand staircase, she noticed something strange at the bottom step. A 3-page handwritten ransom note was spread across the floor. The note claimed that JonBenét had been kidnapped and demanded a ransom of $118,000, an oddly specific figure that matched the exact amount of John Ramsey's Christmas bonus that year. The letter instructed the Ramseys not to call the police and warned that JonBenét would be killed if they did. But within minutes, Patsy dialed 911. The ransom note remains one of the most bizarre and heavily scrutinized pieces of evidence in the case. It was unusually long, over 380 words, far longer than typical ransom demands. It was written on paper taken from a notepad inside the Ramsey home. The pen also belonged to Patsy. Handwriting experts could not conclusively link the writing to her, but suspicions lingered. The note was filled with dramatic language, referencing a small foreign faction and instructing John Ramsey to deliver the ransom money by the following day. The phrasing seemed theatrical, almost like it had been pulled from a movie script. Why would a kidnapper take the time to write such an elaborate letter inside the victim's home? Why demand an oddly specific amount of money? Why leave the child's mother to discover the note rather than ensuring the parents knew of the abduction? None of it made sense. And things were about to become even stranger. When Boulder police officers arrived at the Ramsey home just after 6 a.m., they treated the case as a kidnapping. Friends and neighbors began arriving at the house to offer support. But in doing so, they unknowingly contaminated the crime scene. From the beginning, mistakes plagued the investigation. Officers failed to properly secure the home. Family friends were allowed to clean the kitchen, move objects around, and wander through the rooms. Potential evidence was destroyed before it could be collected. For hours, the police waited for a call from the supposed kidnappers. None came. By early afternoon, authorities instructed John Ramsey to search the house for anything unusual. At 1:05 p.m., John went down the basement with a family friend. There, behind a latched door in a windowless storage room, he found his daughter's lifeless body. JonBenét was lying on the floor, covered with a white blanket. Her wrists were tied with cord, duct tape covered her mouth, and a garrote, a homemade strangulation device, was wrapped around her neck. The scene was horrifying. John immediately picked up his daughter and carried her upstairs, further contaminating evidence. Patsy collapsed in grief. The house was in chaos. What began as a kidnapping case had suddenly become a homicide. The autopsy revealed chilling details. JonBenét had died from asphyxiation due to strangulation, compounded by a blow to the head. The skull fracture was 8.5 inches long, severe enough to render her unconscious. Experts debated whether she had been struck first and then strangled, or vice versa. There were also indications of possible sexual assault, though the evidence was inconclusive. Some believed she had injuries consistent with prior abuse, while others argued they could be explained by natural irritation or medical conditions.
The garrote used to strangle her was made from a length of nylon cord and the broken handle of one of Patsy's paintbrushes. The materials came from inside the Ramsey home. This meant one thing: the killer had time to prepare the murder weapon inside the house. From the moment JonBenét's body was discovered, suspicion turned inward. Police openly questioned whether the crime was staged to cover up a family incident gone wrong. Many investigators believed Patsy Ramsey had struck JonBenét in a fit of rage, possibly over a bedwetting incident, and that John had helped cover up the crime. The elaborate ransom note, they argued, was written to divert suspicion. The note's handwriting bore similarities to Patsy's. The strange phrasing, the use of the Ramsey stationery, and the knowledge of John's bonus all pointed inward. But no physical evidence ever tied the Ramseys to the murder. DNA under JonBenét's fingernails and on her clothing did not match any family member. Burke Ramsey, only 9 at the time, became another subject of speculation. Some believed he may have accidentally killed JonBenét during a sibling conflict, and that the parents staged the scene to protect him. A bowl of pineapple was found on the kitchen counter, with Burke's fingerprints on it. Autopsy results suggested JonBenét had eaten pineapple shortly before her death. Did she sneak some from her brother's bowl and spark a fight? Yet this theory also lacked solid evidence. At age 9, Burke would have struggled to create the sophisticated garrote used in the murder. Others believed an intruder had broken into the Ramsey home that night. A broken basement window offered a possible entry point. Unidentified DNA on JonBenét's clothing fueled the theory. Some investigators speculated that a local pedophile had targeted the Ramsey home. But despite hundreds of suspects being questioned, no intruder theory has ever been proven. The murder of JonBenét Ramsey exploded into international headlines. The combination of wealth, beauty pageants, and a shocking crime made for sensational news coverage. Within weeks, tabloids splashed the Ramseys' faces across front pages, painting them as either grieving parents or cold-blooded killers. Television specials dissected the ransom note, theorized about motives, and turned JonBenét's short life into entertainment. The Ramseys themselves held press conferences, proclaiming their innocence. They criticized the Boulder Police Department for botching the investigation. In 1999, a Colorado grand jury voted to indict John and Patsy Ramsey for child abuse resulting in death. But the district attorney declined to sign the indictment, citing insufficient evidence. The Ramseys were never formally charged. In the years that followed, the case remained frozen in time. Patsy Ramsey died of ovarian cancer in 2006, still proclaiming her innocence. John Ramsey remarried and has largely stayed out of the public eye. Burke Ramsey, now an adult, has defended his family's innocence in rare interviews. In 2016, he appeared on television, breaking his silence for the first time, an appearance that reignited public debate. Meanwhile, the Boulder Police Department has faced constant criticism for its handling of the case. From the contaminated crime scene to the failure to properly test DNA in the early years, mistakes haunted the investigation. In recent years, advances in DNA testing have breathed new life into cold cases across America. JonBenét's case is no exception. In 2008, touch DNA was discovered on her clothing that did not match any Ramsey family member. This finding seemed to support the intruder theory. Yet skeptics argue that the DNA could have come from a factory worker or store employee before the clothing was ever worn. In 2022, investigators confirmed they were working with private labs to apply cutting-edge technology, including genetic genealogy, to re-examine evidence. The same technique has solved cases like the Golden State Killer. Despite these efforts, no suspect has ever been conclusively identified. In 2025, Netflix released Cold Case: Who Killed JonBenét Ramsey? The series reignited public interest, drawing millions of viewers. It highlighted untested DNA, flawed police work, and lingering mysteries. For a new generation, JonBenét's case became more than just a headline from the 1990s. It became a chilling reminder of how justice can slip away when mistakes are made early on. Nearly 3 decades later, the murder of JonBenét Ramsey remains one of America's most haunting cold cases. A little girl, full of life and promise, was taken in the most brutal way imaginable. A ransom note that made no sense. A crime scene filled with contradictions. Parents vilified in the media. A nation divided over theories. And yet, no one has ever been convicted. For true crime followers, JonBenét's case represents the ultimate mystery. For investigators, it remains a painful reminder of lost opportunities. For her family, it is an unending nightmare. Some believe the truth will eventually be uncovered through advances in DNA technology. Others fear that the case will remain forever unsolved. What is certain is this: on that cold December morning in 1996, a 6-year-old girl's life was stolen, and nearly 30 years later, her voice still echoes in the halls of justice. JonBenét Ramsey's story is not just about a crime. It is about innocence lost, justice denied, and the haunting reality that sometimes, even the most famous cases in the world remain unsolved. Burke Ramsey, only 9 at the time, became another subject of speculation. Some believed he may have accidentally killed JonBenét during a sibling conflict, and that the parents staged the scene to protect him. A bowl of pineapple was found on the kitchen counter, with Burke's fingerprints on it. Autopsy results suggested JonBenét had eaten pineapple shortly before her death. Did she sneak some from her brother's bowl and spark a fight? Yet this theory also lacked solid evidence. At age 9, Burke would have struggled to create the sophisticated garrote used in the murder. Others believed an intruder had broken into the Ramsey home that night. A broken basement window offered a possible entry point. Unidentified DNA on JonBenét's clothing fueled the theory. Some investigators speculated that a local pedophile had targeted the Ramsey home. But despite hundreds of suspects being questioned, no intruder theory has ever been proven. Nearly 3 decades later, the murder of JonBenét Ramsey remains one of America's most haunting cold cases. A little girl, full of life and promise, was taken in the most brutal way imaginable. A ransom note that made no sense. A crime scene filled with contradictions. Parents vilified in the media. A nation divided over theories. JonBenét Ramsey's story is not just about a crime. It is about innocence lost, justice denied, and the haunting reality that sometimes, even the most famous cases in the world remain unsolved.